Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. I'm your host, Tammy. Today, I am with Rusty Gunther. He is a professional sales and leadership coach with Southwestern Consulting, and it's a big team of really amazing people that inspire others. And Rusty is a person with more than 10 years of experience diving into sales, leadership, and he is passionate about serving others and helping them reach their goals. He also has, as he tells me, a creative background, so I'm really excited to dig into that. And I would love to know your origin story, Rusty. How did you get to where you are now? And what creative things did you do in your past that help you now as well?
Well, thank you, Tammy. I'm excited to be here with you. And that question goes really far back to like the creative part of this is I, at the age of 17, left Missouri to go to California to be an actor. And there I learned that film and television was not for me, but I loved theater, and particularly Shakespeare.
Yes.
Which led me to Oxford to study Shakespeare. And then I went with a show to London. Then I went to Paris. And then I went to New York. And in New York, I finished my undergrad. I did some shows. I toured then for a while. And then I built sets. I worked in a lot of different places to build things and create. And I worked for like doing windows for Macy's and Donna Karan and Saks and Ralph Lauren. That led me to do some set work as well, where I met a girl. And I then left New York. We went to Missouri, where I'm from, and then I got into the family business. Family business was Burger King. So this is such a far shot from where I was and where I'd been. That was a very short way to tell a very long journey. But inside of that, I mean, family has always been something that's really important to me. And so I wanted to be with my family, with this new person in my life. And then I ended up back in the Burger King's fixing things because I was mechanically inclined. And that led me to managing a restaurant and then managing multiple restaurants and then managing 5 restaurants and then becoming director of operations over 10 franchise locations of Burger King's, where I never saw myself. So I then left that. I responded to an ad on Monster back in the day for a job at Aflac, the insurance company. And I liked what they had to say. I went and I started in the Aflac business. I built out an organization there. I worked up pretty quickly to running a team, they call them districts, and then running a region in St. Louis. And then was asked 5 times to come take over an operation in Phoenix, Arizona. The 5th time, we had just gone through COVID and there was no reason I shouldn't have gone. So now, overseeing the Phoenix operation, I built that operation back to a level where all the managers were winning. People were doing really well. And I built that off of compassion. And I've been able to carry that competitive spirit along with the message of acting out of love for the person across from you. I think that's really important. And it's integral to who I am as a leader, and as a salesperson, and as a creator. And so, digging into all of this, I then went to work with Southwestern Consulting, who I had hired previously as a coach for myself. So I worked with them for 3 years on the client side. And I was looking for new options. I kind of checked the boxes that I wanted to check in that career. And they were like, why not become a coach? One thing led to another. And I started working then with people in all industries across the United States and actually into Eastern Europe as well, and finding that we're all facing similar things here. And what's truly important is that we have a good vision of who we want to be and that we're true to that vision of ourselves and that we build habits that are consistent with that vision. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing is just working with people to not only hone what do I want my life to look like? What are the things that are really important to me? But what am I doing every day to live up to those expectations of myself? I don't know if that answered your question of like what's your origin story, but that was so there's like three careers in there, right? So there you
Yeah.
are.
I love that at the heart of all of those careers is still a person who has passion and drive and cares about making a difference, whether it's through art and theater or through coaching others or through making sure that the restaurant operations are running smoothly and people have their expectations met. That's fantastic. And of course, it's led you to where you are now. Is there like one sort of guiding piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
That's a hard question to answer. I because of the journey that I've taken, and I don't think because I'm a very passionate and focused person, I wouldn't be able to listen to anything that said you're going to veer from this path that you were on in a different, completely different direction to what you're passionately focused on right now, and it's going to be okay. It would have been hard to hear that you will be able to change directions and everything will be okay. I think the advice then, knowing that I would give to myself is just continue to follow what you're passionate about in the moment and to work towards those ideals and everything will be okay.
I love that. I love that. And it speaks so true, not just to what you're doing, but I feel like it speaks to so many people because you can find a career, you can be doing it and loving it, but then you can think, well, what if I pivot over here and take this huge leap? Is that going to be okay? There's always so many unanswered questions and sort of like living in that uncertainty until you reach that next platform.
Yeah. Or curiosity, right? Like maybe it's not an uncertainty, but it's just maintaining curiosity about what you're involved in the moment, right? Not thinking too far into the future to sort of trap yourself, but thinking like, what am I curious about in this moment right now? And what do I need to do to like satiate that curiosity? Right.
Mhm.
And I think that applies. I do not know where that applies in Burger King. I will say that right now. But I think that applies so much to people building intentional lives, whether that be in the arts or in business or in leadership and building an intentional organization, right? Or maybe you're a leader in the arts and you're not sure what our brand is, like what is our culture and what do I want it to be? Is that the same thing? Staying curious allows you, I think, to be open to hearing the good ideas from the people who are around you, who you support yourself with. And if you close the door to that, I think that's where I see organizations go stale.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I think it is like, where's your passion? Where can I maybe like go in a different direction and pivot? But that passion and willingness to be open to new things, that's very important.
When you take on clients for coaching, whether it's individuals or businesses, what do you find is one of the most common challenges that you get across the board? If you've been feeling burned out, stressed, overwhelmed, or exhausted, the resources and courses at the Self Care Institute are here to support you. The Self Care Institute was founded by Dr. Ami Kunimura and provides support for individuals and organizations with burnout prevention, burnout recovery, and stress management. I've personally taken a few of these courses and found them to be super helpful, both professionally and personally. The care you give yourself matters just as much as the care you give to others. But if self-care is difficult for you, you're not alone. And the Self-Care Institute is here to support your well-being, resilience, and sense of fulfillment at work and at home. For more information, visit selfcareinstitute.com or go to the show notes and click on the link.
When I take on new clients, there's often there's a competitive piece to it that people are measuring themselves against others. People aren't measuring themselves against themselves and where they want themselves to be. And that generally leads to, so there's that, right? They start with, I'm not where I think I should be right now. And that's good. That's a good place to start. When you ask someone the question, what do you want? Answering that question is very hard. And so, really, just helping people first cast a vision. Like, let's create that vision. What would make you happy? What do you want? Right? You have this opportunity in front of you. You have these skills. You have these resources. What do you want to do with that? Let's first cast the vision. What do we want? And then we have to break it down to, okay, so that long term vision, we've got to pull back into some short term goals to help us achieve that vision. From there, we can create habits. From there, we can create daily habits, really work the numbers backwards so that we know that we're tracking the right activities to help achieve our vision. And that's not always only business related, that often is family related. That could be related to your hobbies, right? That could be related to your relationships. Man, I want to be remembered as a good friend. What are you doing on a daily basis to achieve that, right? Like, what are you doing right now that is going to bring that to fruition? That's going to make people say, Tammy was a really good friend. That's what I work with people on. So whatever that is for you, right? If that's, man, I want to put $1 billion in the bank. Okay. That sounds nice. Why? Maybe that's a very important question to that too, because that comes to solidification of your vision. Why is that important to you? Because if it's just a random big number, there's going to become a point where this is challenging, and your why then needs to be important. Like, that has to be important, right? Like, the pain of doing what you have to do to get there has got to be outweighed than the pain of not achieving that goal. And that's what your why is all about. So that will drive you through. So it can't just be $1 billion to be $1 billion. Who cares? Why is that important? Then we can figure out where we go from there, right?
Do you ever use vision boards or any other type of things that a person can manipulate in order to help brainstorm and achieve their goals?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of vision boards. I have, I'm looking, so in my setup here on this wall, there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. There's 9 vision boards
Nice.
on there, and they're not mine, right? But I do think that really getting crystal clear about it, about your vision, means you need to get crystal clear about what that looks like visually as well. So I want people to do that work. And when they do, I put that in front of me too. So when we are having our conversations, sometimes that's just a spark for me to go back to, hey, is this really important? I don't see this, what we're talking about right now, whatever the hiccup was. I do not see that on your vision board. How does this relate? Is this actually important? Or is this one of these creative excuses that we tell ourselves is really important in the moment that holds us back from what's really important and getting where we want to go? So yeah, I think vision boards are great. I do have mine up here too, and it's something that I work through. But yeah, beyond that, I think it's really about asking yourself the right questions to get really clear about what that intentional life looks like.
Speaking of intentional life, you definitely seem like a lifelong learner and that you use your time wisely. And I'm wondering what is a book that's really impacted you, whether it was read recently or ages ago?
Hmm. I read a lot and I consume a lot of content. So I can tell you that recently, actually, I'll give two here, and they're both from Tim Ferriss. One is the 4 Hour Work Week. And if you are thinking, man, that's something that I never really wanted to look into because it sounds kind of hokey, I think it does. The title itself does sound kind of like shirking responsibilities. And that's not at all what it is. But I think what it does is it creates a framework to ask better questions on how you're accomplishing your goals, right? Like, how do I put in the minimum effective dose or minimum effort to attain the result that I want, right? That's sort of the crux there. And that applied to something called the 4 Hour Body, which really goes to diet and exercise, made a huge impact on my life in the last year. And I think those two together, if I feel stuck, sometimes even creatively, the 4 hour work week will pull me out of it because it reframes the questions that I ask myself about why do I feel stuck here? Because of what's possible when you really drill it down to what's the minimum effective dose here? What is the minimum amount of effort I have to put in to achieve the desired result? And when you do that and it feels so small, spending a full 8 hours at that is it sounds huge. Like, all right, you spend 8 hours doing that small thing, then let's do the math on that. What do those numbers add up to? Because man, you can do a lot with a day.
Mhm, mhm. It definitely sounds like a work smarter, not harder situation.
Yeah, it is. I think I think it puts that into play. I also think it comes from the mind of someone who is a workaholic. It seems like to me anyway, who like likes to ingest stuff and learn different languages and everything else. Um, and so it applies the principle of working smarter and not harder from a person who works hard, right? Which if you can work smart and hard, holy cow, imagine what you can accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's one I go back to quite a
I'd
bit.
love to um, sort of rewind a little bit. And you talked about your time at Oxford and your time studying Shakespeare. What are some things that you loved about the creative process in doing that, in the acting and the studying?
So I love the collaboration. I love working with people in the moment on something that after that moment is done, it doesn't exist. Right. There's something very beautiful about that when it comes to theater. And really diving into that in scripts and stories that have had relevance for, gosh, almost 500 years now. That's you're part of something very big in that moment. And I think you can feel that and the audience can feel that because they're a part of it too. So I think that's something that I really loved about that. And going to that overarching theme that I've carried through all of this, acting out of love for the audience is being inclusive and it's drawing them into what you're doing and a part of the experience. And when you're able to do that, and if you've ever been in the audience of a show where this is done well, you know what I'm talking about. You can feel it in the moment. You're all experiencing it together. And there's something cosmic and beautiful about that moment. And then it's gone. And you can talk about it, but you can't go back and see it. You can't record it. People try to do that, recording theater. And I think there's an art form to that as well, but it's not the same as experiencing it live and in the moment.
I completely agree. And it's very similar to when people go to like an orchestra concert or a rock concert, any of the performing arts, there's just this beauty and magic between the audience and the performers that cannot be replicated.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think concerts is a good way to experience this too, to open that up to maybe people who aren't like super big fans of Shakespeare. I experienced the same thing at a Foo Fighters concert, right? Like you can be in that moment with those people at the time, and there's something very special about that.
Yeah, it's like a sense of community, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And we're doing this together. Here we are doing this, right? Look at us.
Do you have a favorite Shakespeare play?
It changes with my moods. It does. Um, I love this sounds so silly, probably, but I love Hamlet so much. I think it's
So good.
such a beautiful story and it's really well told. I think that would have to, in the moment, that's what I would say.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah, Hamlet and Macbeth are pretty much tied for me.
That's the other one I was going to say. We were watching, my wife and I. Oh, that girl that I met is now my wife. We have two kids together. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
yay.
and she was an actress in a show that I designed and built the set for. So, full circle here. Art is very much a part of our lives still. And my son is a very talented visual artist who he just he's had a pencil in his hand since he could hold one. Like, I mean, at 3 years old, he was just constantly drawing stuff. And now he's 13 and we don't go anywhere without a sketch pad. Like, he needs it in the car. If when we go to dinner, he brings it in with him. Like, if you're at a restaurant, he's sitting there sketching stuff. And it's remarkable. But Macbeth came out the other day. We were watching something and someone was like, "What's going on with this plot point or this character?" And I was like, "That's Lady Macbeth." And everyone knew exactly what I meant in that moment. They're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, okay. Oh, cool. I get it."
That is really neat. And that's awesome also, pivoting a little bit about the fact that you're so encouraging to have your son bring the sketch pad everywhere because some parents are like, "Oh, leave it in the car, we're gonna eat and have family time." But like, I love that you. I mean, obviously, people can parent however they feel comfortable, but I love that you encourage the creativity in even in places that are not as common to see creativity.
Yeah. That goes back to the curiosity, right, Tammy?
Mhm.
It's like, all right, what are you curious about in the moment? Like, just pursue that with passion. And I think if you feed that, that can go a lot of places. Now, my daughter, she's artistically inclined as well, but she's much more into sports and dance and gymnastics and this, I would call it normal stuff, right? My son is not, he's like, no, I don't sports ball. And that's fine. But whatever they do, I think just if they can do that too. So if I could take that advice to myself that you asked me about earlier today, and apply that there, I think that's a perfect place to do it is with your own kids, right?
Yeah.
May veer from this. You might not always be drawing. You might not be an animator for your favorite studio, but stay curious and everything will be okay.
We talked a little bit about some of your favorite things about being creative in theater, but what are some of your favorite things about being creative in your current position?
So in my current position, listening is really important because you're listening for what people are saying, but you're also listening very carefully for what they're not saying. Um, and I think you can tie that back to like in the theater world, you would tie that back to improv, right? The only way that you are going to be good and that you're going to get any kind of good result if you are an incredible listener. Yes, you got to be quick witted. You've got to have a pretty sharp tongue to be good in that world of improv. What maybe more important is your ability to listen and to really take in what's happening all around you so that you know the cues to jump on to make your next point or for in coaching to help that client discover and to weed through the things like we talked about earlier that may not be important in the long run, but they're flashing bright right now and it's very loud and it seems like very important in the moment, but is this part of our bigger picture? Is this part of the vision of where we're going with this intentional life that we have? And if not, we got to be listening, right? Then we can talk about that if you want to, but maybe let's put a pin in that. And here's the things that you told me that were important 3 months ago, right? That we need to stay on task with. So where are we driving this from that point of view? From the creative side of that, you've got to be prepared. We were talking before we started recording about the importance of being on time for both of us. And there are people who are late all the time, and they're amazing, and they do good work. That's not part of my process. I need to be early. It allows me to ground myself. I also really like to be prepared. So I would be off book early in the process, right? And that allowed me to listen more, to be more present in the moment. So for me, in working with my coaching clients and working with people to help them build out habits around their goals, I've got to be on early, and I've got to review all the points that were important. First of all, I'm looking at their vision board, right? I'm remembering where we were from the last moment so that I can be present and listen, because we may go a completely different direction. That's okay. But I've got to set myself up and be very prepared to give people the best of me. And I think that's where that preparedness comes from.
You've found a lot of success with where you are, and you're obviously doing well and you're happy, but life definitely has ups and downs. Is there something that you're willing to talk about, whether it's an internal or external barrier that you overcame to get to where you are?
Yeah. Yeah. I think in the world that I'm in sales and business and leadership and working with people, the best part of my job is people. And the worst part of my job is people. So that's not always easy. And you also have to struggle with your own insecurities of, am I the right person to be helping guide this person to their goals? I'm trying to think specifically for you though, in an area. I think here's a good piece of this. And it's interesting you asked about vision earlier, because I've coached a lot of people through vision. It's a big point for me, right? You've got to be very clear about where you're going. And when I really started to focus, this may sound horrible, but when I really started to focus on growing a coaching business and working with to get that out there, I was kind of winging it. I could feel it. And here's where I felt it. I could feel it in the moments when it's too quiet in my office. And I know it's too quiet in my office because I have multiple clocks on my wall, and they tick very loudly just for different time zones. And if I can hear it ticking, then I'm probably not talking to somebody, and I'm in a people business. I should be talking to somebody most of the time. And the reason I wasn't is because I was either lacking vision in the moment, I wasn't tied to my why, I didn't have a clear picture of where I was going and what I wanted. What did I want? I knew I had a history of working with and developing leaders and successful people. But what did I want with that? That was a tough spot to be in. And so I went through myself the process that I would take anybody else through. And I've done myself multiple times before, but not in this way. I had done it specifically for building out other organizations in a different industry. And so I had to answer those questions fresh. And after I did that, these things got a lot easier to do. It became easier to reach out to people I didn't know and introduce myself and offer to do a workshop for their organization. Without that work, there's two things right here that are looking at me: things I love about my life, things I regret in my past, and I won't repeat them, and 15 goals I want to accomplish in this next year. Without those guide points and without those anchors, this work gets really difficult. And it's not just coaching, it's anything that we're trying to do. If we don't know where we're going and we aren't taking the lessons with us from where we've been, we're really just winging it and hoping for the best. So taking myself through that process, and I'm not, I don't have a straight A report card here. I work on this every day. I work on this every week because I'm not perfect at it. And I think that's challenge of doing the work yourself so that you can coach others effectively. I think it makes me a better coach, but I also think it makes me a better listener because I know the things that I tell myself, the head trash that I tell myself, that I would never let out to anybody else. It's probably happening in my clients' heads too. And I don't need to say it, but if I can identify it and maybe direct the conversation a little bit, maybe we can get through those things together and I can learn some things from them to help me with my own stuff.
I appreciate you sharing that. It sounds like being a coach and a mentor, you really have to be vulnerable in order to be effective. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I would agree with that. It doesn't always, it may not sound like it from a client's perspective at the time, but I think you have to be willing to go there. And obviously I am. I mean, we're talking right here. I know this will be published in some way for people to hear. So I'm a very open book, but in the moment, with a coaching client, it's about them, right? So if my experience or if I can take something that will have value in the conversation in being open, then I'm going to use that opportunity to help them. But I think a trap that people can find themselves in this work is making it about yourself and not about your client and their goals. And selfishness is not acting out of love, right? I used to talk about this in insurance all the time, Tammy. It is important. It is a key value that we act out of love in this organization. We do not work from greed. It's not a good place to advise people from. We do not work out of desperation. Desperation is selfish. It also really muffles what you can hear as to what your potential clients' goals are. Does this help them get closer to hitting their goals? Does it protect them in some way? If so, if that's a yes, you should move forward. If no, that's okay. You have to be okay with that. So, as long as we're moving towards the goals of the person across from us, I think we're going in the right direction.
And I love that you do things selflessly. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do the podcast. Like, even though I'm the host, it's not about me, it's about the guest. It's about, uplifting and amplifying their voices and the work that they do. And then the listeners being able to be inspired by that and, uplifted themselves, or even entertained or learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder how your audience is going to take this one. And I would urge them, don't pass by this one because I am not a recording artist or an active theater artist, but my background comes from that. And we are all dealing with these things, right? We're all dealing with a lack of clarity, with a lack of vision. We're all dealing with head trash, right? That we really, on if we're honest with ourselves, we're not very nice to ourselves most of the time. Working with a coach will help you rewrite some of that so that you are changing the narrative in your mind and you're being kinder to yourself because we're not perfect, but we're doing our best. And we've got to give ourselves some grace sometimes, especially if we're going to achieve a big picture goal. And I know that we have those in the arts community as well. We want to make an impact on this world. And it's important to be able to work through those things with somebody to develop the right habits to make that achievable. So I think when we first started talking, I was like, man, where's this going to be? But then I just thought about my own journey and where that went. And man, it would have really helped. I had some mentors, but the difference between a mentor in your same field or your same business, or in your management structure, coach, is that a coach has nothing to gain from the decisions that you make other than helping you achieve your goal. There's zero tie for them to the result, except that they want you to do well, right? Hopefully, they do it. You guys work really well together, and you introduce them to more people. I've had mentors. I've had people who I've worked with and managers who are great and were great leaders. I've been very lucky with that in my life. But they have their own agenda and we're working on the same things. So that fresh perspective for me as a client, as a coaching client, was huge in just helping develop what are the things I need to be doing to achieve what's important to me.
And speaking of coaches and mentors, did you have any role models growing up or anyone in particular who has had a big influence in your life?
Um, yeah, I've had a number and too many to count. And when you first started talking about that, um, I am from St. Louis, Missouri originally, and I grew up a Cardinals fan. And my hero was Ozzie Smith. And that was the first person that popped into mind when you said that. Say mentor? No, I've had great mentors and I've had great coaches. And I get to work side by side with a lot of those coaches now. What makes someone a great mentor is that they have accomplished what you're trying to accomplish. What makes someone a great coach is that they know how to guide you to accomplish what you want to accomplish because no one has ever done what you're going to do. And that's a very powerful thing to hold on to, right? A mentor is someone who's paved that path. They can show you where to go. A coach will help you forge your own path.
What is the biggest sector of coaching that you're curious about right now?
I like I like the odd industries. I mean, most of where I work is real estate, financial services, insurance, banking, cars. But we work with all kinds of industries. And I've seen a surge of the trades in the last year that plumbers and construction and the trades have gotten into coaching. And I love that. And I am curious about that. I want to see more there. Um, we also work with a lot of nonprofits. I think that's important too, because if we are going to make an impact in the world, we need to align ourselves with organizations that are also making an impact. So I love to work with people who are working towards a bigger cause, a bigger purpose. Beyond that, I like the kind of odd referrals. Who knows where that goes, but I have seen a surge in the trades and nonprofits is one that's close to my heart.
Excellent. Well, before we go, I'm going to ask sort of the hallmark question, which is, in your own words, what does living a creative life mean to you?
All right, so I was kind of ready for this because I've listened to your podcast in in my own life. Here's what I think is important, and here's what I draw from creatives and people who are artistic that I think everyone should take with them is that people who are creative try over and over and over again. And we can pull that into any discipline that we want, right? You can pull that into sports. That's an easy comparison to bring it into. But you could also bring it into this. There's a lot of people who come to me and they say, Rusty, I need to get good at Excel. I'm not good at Excel. And you're really good at it. And I have no idea why they think I'm good at Excel. Maybe I sent them a spreadsheet, right? I don't have any training in Excel. I'm classical theater. That's where my training is. But what I took from the creative process is you can go in and be curious and look on YouTube. Ask for help from people, right? Do it and don't be afraid to get it wrong until you get it right. And that's what I love about creatives is watching someone work with paint and watching someone work with, my son, I'll bring him up again. He can do amazing things with a pencil, but he has failed that so many times. There are so many pieces of paper in his sketchbooks that you could see he was like starting with a head, but he didn't like it for some reason, drew an X and just went to the next page with nothing else. So what I love about creatives is that they try and try and try, and then they keep working on it, right? It's never done. It's never perfect, but we keep trying, and that's what makes us good.
Excellent. Any last parting words for the listeners?
Thank you for staying into this long. That says a lot about you. And yeah, I can't wait to get some feedback on this. And Tammy, you are a joy to talk to. And I really appreciate your time and look forward to another conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rusty. It has been a pleasure. Listeners, please check the show notes to learn more about Rusty. And if you're interested in his coaching services, there will be a link for that. And as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the show? Have a question? Stop by the Facebook and Instagram pages. Links are in the show notes, or search for Creative Piecemeal Podcast on social media and click follow for all the latest.